So welcome everyone. My name is Marton Csernai and I work for the KILT protocol. I am the product owner and the lead researcher. So today, after a little intro, I would like to discuss the main problems on the way to fully functional decentralized organizations and how we would propose solutions to these problems by introducing novel virtual structures and by addressing the regulatory requirements around these. And finally, I would like to put these into context for the Polkadot ecosystem. So if you look at the blockchain world, you can easily see its evolution from a technological point of view. But it is also very interesting to look at it from a regulatory point of view. And if we look at what happened in the past until now, we can see how these two fields interact with each other, and so we can project a bit into the future as well. So basically what we have seen so far, regulation evolved by catching up with new technologies. In the first step, Bitcoin gave us a secure infrastructure for value transfer, and at first, governments neglected Bitcoin, but now they acknowledge it as a utility, and you can pay your taxes when you make profit on trading Bitcoin. In the second step, Ethereum gave us a universal blockchain computer where anybody could start their ICOs. Then after some time, regulators caught up, and now different countries have different regulations regarding ICOs. And so currently, we see the proliferation of security token offerings, or STOs. And here, the asset is basically the ownership of a company, which is managed on-chain. The ownership is managed on-chain. And so here, the regulators are looking at this right now. And for example, in Germany, the securities, any kind of securities, must be on paper. And so the question is how to digitize this problem or tokenize this requirement. So what we need for the next step, if we have this, is the companies on chain are possible from a technological point of view right now. But from a regulatory point of view, it's quite tricky. So we assume that we could create sandboxed virtual structures or virtual organizations. And the first step would be to enable identities to start the company without a paper-based notarization process. But it's not enough. So it would be just an online platform to start the company. The question here is, so since these virtual structures would help people decide in a structured way of the company, not only founding, but also the working process and decision-making should be enabled online. And so this could happen on a public blockchain, since it would provide a transparent audit trail. And later, we could build on these steps. And so in a DAO, mechanics of a general company should be verifiable. So if a DAO, the working of a DAO is legal or not. And so the next step would be a self-owned car, maybe, which is 100% taxable. And but to understand or to get there, it's quite tricky. And so one of the most interesting events in the crypto evolution was the DAO, which basically attempted to jump through these some necessary building blocks with a nice shortcut. But this great endeavor spectacularly failed in a couple of months. So just in a short, if you are not familiar with it, it was a completely virtualized venture capital company run on the Ethereum main chain, and the potential profit would have been distributed among the shareholders. It was founded in May 2016 as a smart contract, and it never invested in any company, and it was closed down due to an error in the smart contract, which was exploited by a group or someone in July 2016, so in a couple of months. So basically, it was too fast for investors and regulators. And we think that since the shareholders, it wasn't really there was no good way how shareholders could make informed decisions this led to the curation problem. And since investors and regulators did not understand the software and shares, became unregulated security tokens. This led to the software and regulation problem. And so at KILT, we propose that by solving these problems, we can enable the next step on this evolution. So let's look at these. So right now, organizations are working in a way that you have investors who put in capital, and they select curators who are a board of a company or a CEO or some leading board, and they get experts or employees of a company who they incentivize through paying salaries. And these experts create work or do work and create results for the curators or the company, and investors take profit or loss from these results. And so the investors trust the curators that they curate the company well, and the curators select the experts to create value. If we look at conventional token-curated registries, sorry for the, it shifted a little bit, but there are 3 restaurants in the list of a conventional. If we imagine that there's a TCR which collects which restaurants are good, and the curators curate the list of these restaurants, then this is the case that the curators are also the investors, the curators, and the experts who curate this list. And in a virtual structure that we propose we propose to separate the roles between the investors and curators and the experts who do the operational work in this structure. And this would be the case that the curators select the expert or curate the experts on this list who can, so the contrast is that in a conventional TCR, a user goes to the list and checks the list. If a restaurant that she wants to go to is good or not. In our case, or in a virtual structure case, the user would go to the restaurant and would see if the restaurant has an attestation or a credential from an expert who is working for this virtual structure. And the curators curate the structure in a way that they have the best experts doing the work, and so they protect their brand and protect their investment. And we feel that this would solve the curation problem in the next generation virtual structures or companies. And so the next problem is the software and regulation problem. So here, companies built on software are not transparent. Neither investors nor regulators can understand the mechanisms and details defined by the software. So regulators would need one trusted and tested middleware where virtual structures could be configured upon. And we at KILT protocol envision a virtual structure ecosystem which allows entities to easily create new form of configurable virtual structures which meet regulatory and application-specific needs in certain jurisdictions. And in this ecosystem, virtual structures could be built on top of a blockchain-based platform which would provide a regulatory environment. And these virtual structures would be registered and taxed to provide legal security around investment and the operation of the virtual organization. So the underlying middleware would need to be tested and approved by authorities only once, and configurations of each individual virtual structure could be easily checked by investors and regulators because they can trust the middleware. And so what are the preconditions for these virtual structures? Well, from a technological point of view, we need KYC identities And so we need to manage these identities, and we also need to handle legitimations from authorities or trusted entities, and we need this middleware for parameterizing and running virtual structures. From a regulatory point of view, we need maybe a virtual person, which is in addition to the natural, legal persons, it would be a third type of a legal entity, or it could be also that only a small modification of the company law is needed. This is up to discussion currently. And we would also need an automated process for the registration, control, and taxation of these virtual structures. And so at KILT, we create a trust infrastructure, or we build a trust infrastructure. This is already in our testnet. We create revocable credentials, which are anchored on the blockchain, our substrate-based blockchain. And we also enable complex trust structures where you can provide legitimation to an entity in KILT, and also you can build up complex delegation trees where you can delegate specific rights or to attest to specific type of credentials in a big organization. So building on this infrastructure, registering a virtual structure would look like the following. So you have a KYC'd entity, an initiator, and this KYC'd entity would send the parameters of the virtual structure that he wants to start, and also his credentials into the system, and hence would create an unapproved virtual structure. And this structure could request request legitimation from an authority, in a specific jurisdiction, and this authority could check the parameters and the KYC identity on the blockchain, if it's still legit, if the credentials are not revoked, and then attest to legitimize this structure and put the attestations on the blockchain and send these credentials to the structure. And so the structure would be from this point on an approved structure from the authority, and this approval would be anchored to the blockchain, which creates security and transparency. So these virtual structures could enable various business models. An investment firm where curators invest into TCR to employ experts, and these would find the best investments and propose decisions, or a publisher, job portal, software portal, and many others. And so put this in perspective. If we connect to the Polkadot ecosystem, the event of let's say, having an attestation from a virtual structure on the KILT chain, when this is written to the KILT chain, this could trigger some messages or some cascades in the Polkadot ecosystem, and this might mean that this would enable an investment activity on an Ethereum smart contract or any other type of messages. So, in conclusion, virtual structures create new business opportunities for investors and can be taxed. So this is also a great opportunity for governments. And we assume that businesses will move to those jurisdictions which present a regulatory framework for virtual persons and a simple process for registering these structures. And from the evolution, we see that tokenization of assets is a necessary intermediate step for this to happen. The trust infrastructure is already available. This TCR technology will be available in a couple of years. And our legal team is very active in raising awareness about these legal issues and how to solve them. So we at KILT are very excited to enable the next step in the evolution of the DAOs and self-owned assets. So thank you very much. I want to just say my acknowledgements to Ingo and Gustav, our CEO and legal counsel, and thank you for your attention. And if you guys are interested, we are here. You can find us from the gray shirts, and we are also here at Web3. So thank you.